everyone, and welcome to another video. I am Simply G, and today I'm going to be showing off all of the manga that I got for this month. There's a bit here, there's also novels and light novels and all sorts of things to get into as well. So rather than spend too long on this intro, I'm just going to get straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. First up, I have multiple volumes from a single series. This is one that I'm probably never going to finish in English because a lot of the later volumes are super duper hard to find. And the series itself is incomplete. It was discontinued in English, which is very, very sad. But I managed to find a fantastic deal from a local seller. These came from her private collection. And I was just so happy to see these volumes for a really reasonable price, especially considering how some of the single volumes for this go for. And this is Swan by Kyoko Ariyoshi. This is a 70s shoujo manga about ballet, put out by CMX. There was 15 out of the 25 volumes that this series is in its entirety that was released in English. And so although not having yet gotten volumes 1 and 2, so I haven't started reading this one, I do have 1 and 2 on order, so I will be able to actually read this from the beginning, and I'm super happy and excited for that. But for now, we have volume 3, volume 4, volume 5, volume 6, volume 7, volume 8, volume 9, volume 10, volume 11, and volume 12, which is the last of the volumes that I got from this particular seller. Obviously, this is a huge amount. A lot of these are really hard to find, but volumes 13, 14, and 15, I really don't think CMX put very many copies of them out initially anyway, but even more so now, 15 years down the line, I feel it's just going to be impossible to find some of those volumes. So if I do, in some miracle, stumble across volume 13, 14, and 15 for not a price that isn't several $100s, then I might pick it up, but this is an incomplete English series anyway, so what's the difference of stopping at 12 versus stopping at 15? Is there one? I don't know. So I haven't had the chance to read this one, but knowing me, knowing my tastes, knowing my love of manga, classic shoujo like this, but also manga focused on dance and dancers, I knew that I would enjoy this. Obviously, being from the mid-70s, it has a very beautiful but very recognizable sort of style that it follows. And it's just, it's gorgeous. I'm so sad that CMX fell to the fate that it did, because they really were such a interesting publisher that licensed stuff that really no other publisher would even dream to, wouldn't even risk it. But this is a series that I've long wanted to read. And they're in really good condition as well for being, 15 plus years old. Maybe one day I'll finish it. Who knows? I certainly won't be able to finish it in English unless it gets relicensed. But again, that's probably highly unlikely at this point. And of course, for those paying attention, you can actually see people complain about Viz like spine inconsistencies where the tiny Viz logo and Shonen Jump logo changes between different printings of things as different rebrands happen. But man, oh man, people who complain about this stuff are, I feel, very young to the community, young to the hobby, the collecting hobby, because this was just how CMX put out these releases. They started with a much more standard typeface and for the title, and then you can notice as well they have last name, first name. Then volume 5 it switched to a more stylized logo, and then they just completely changed the look of their spines from 6 onwards, and switched Arayoshi's name to be first name, last name. So, I mean, yeah, talk about inconsistencies. In saying that, these sorts of things don't bother me. I'm just super duper happy on having the series itself, especially as I really considered this one a title that I was never going to get, one that just was too outside of my ability. I missed the boat on it, but I've really had some luck over the last, well, with this and then previously as well with another CMX title from Eroica with Love, where I got a couple volumes of that for super duper cheap. And then also Moonchild, things like that. So I do have a couple CMX titles, but this isn't a publisher that I really see a lot of current day collectors talking about or getting volumes for, obviously because they're super hard to find and super out of print, but also because their catalog was a little bit outside of the popular interest. A lot of some of their titles that did have more of a general appeal, like Emma, were relicensed and re-released. But that, I think, is really the only one that I can think of. Maybe there might have been another one or two, but really not a catalog that had a lot of die-hard fans, or a lot of, maybe that's unfair, not a catalog that had a lot of series that, due to whether it was their age or their length, would never have the popularity and therefore the sales and return on investment for majority of the larger publishers in the same way that some other companies and current day publishing looks at these sorts of titles. So I will be sad forever that this will be an incomplete series, but I am overjoyed in being able to find it at all and to now have it in my collection. It's really, really exciting and wonderful. So completed I also got a number of volumes from another series which also completed it for me as well. This was a series that I got a huge chunk of the volumes a month or so ago for very, very cheap thanks to a library sale. And so I, over this last month, just was able to find all of the volumes that I was missing for pretty much retail price, or at retail or below retail price, which was fantastic because this series, I think a lot of people thought it was out of print. It isn't. Yen Press has said that they will be reprinting it. It will be available again, but for a long time, lots of the volumes were very, very hard to find, and so resellers or people getting rid of volumes, they either weren't available, like you just couldn't get some volumes, or you'd have to pay ridiculous prices for them, which I always I say with it one like caveat, I really don't like to spend out of print prices or like price gouged money for things, especially just standard volumes. There's been one exception to that rule, but I find myself looking back on the decision that I made, being very happy with it, and also very happy at the price I paid for when I did versus the price that that series goes for now. Because I would absolutely not be putting down the money that people are asking for now. The exception is Mushishi. Mushishi's my exception. I didn't pay, I think it's like I've seen listings for like $1,600. That is disgusting. I did not pay even anywhere within the realm of that. I paid a couple $100 for the full set, but I did not pay a couple $100 for the full set of this. But I did get multiple volumes of the series, and I'm happy to be able to complete it now. And that is Barakamon. We have volume 3. Oh, volume front and back. Volume 4. Volume 7. Volume 12. Volume 14. Volume 17, which is the last of the like actual main storyline that I had to get. And then I also got volume 18+1, which is the guidebook. It also has illustrations and things like that. This is a slice of life comedy by Satsuki Yoshino. The story of this character here, Honda, who after kind of going through like a mental breakdown, he had a bit of an emotional outburst during a competition. He's a professional calligraphy artist, or a professional calligrapher, and after being judged pretty harshly, he had this emotional outburst and caused a great scandal. Anyway, he's sent off to this small island town in the country, or on an island more specifically, in order for him to kind of cool his head, to figure himself out, to gain some perspective on his artistic process and what he wants to do and who he wants to be and all these sorts of things. And so he's happy to do that. He's still annoyed at the outcome of what led to this, but he recognized that, he wanted to get better at his art and thought, or agreed with his family that, taking some time out of the city, that'll be a great refresh. What Honda doesn't realize, though, because he is a city boy, born and bred, he really doesn't understand the realities of living in a small town at all. And more importantly, when he arrives at his new home, the building itself has been kind of co-opted by the local teens and kids as their hangout spot. And although he is now living there and really doesn't get along with kids or doesn't really have any previous experience with kids, they just keep coming back. They're like, I know you live here now, but this is still our space and we're still gonna come over. And again, what he doesn't realize is that this is a small community. Everyone knows everyone's business. Everyone knows what everyone else is doing because everyone has known everyone their entire lives. And as the outsider, as the newcomer to this island, he is a curiosity. He's just kind of this big point of difference that these kids have never experienced before, and a lot of the adults haven't experienced either. And so because of that, he is so much more interesting to these teenagers than he could have ever imagined. And most notably, one of the kids who does hang out at his place is a little girl, elementary school girl called Naru, who is on the cover here. And she just keeps, she's a rascal. She gets in, she's an annoyance, but she's also the one who drags Honda out and gets him engaged with the people of the town, because really, if left to his own devices, he would just hole up in this house and not interact with anyone. This is a fantastically funny, really sweet, but also cynical story. I really appreciate the series because it never has this judgment. It doesn't kind of romanticize this idea of small town living. It has a pretty fair and balanced look at, you know, the pros and cons of urban life, you know, living in a big city, and then also the pros and cons of living in a really small community. In a lot of people's hometowns, these country communities that are much more isolated and have a lot smaller population, so a lot more involved and engaged community. And I really appreciated that, because so often with this kind of story, especially, it can be really heavy-handed in like one or the other. Normally, if it's like those city folk coming in from their crazy lives in the in the big smoke, coming to the country for the first time and just seeing how utopic and tranquil and peaceful that, you know, all of the pressures of their urban day-to-day lives are gone. But also, like, you also see those stories about the small town kids going to the big city to find themselves and to experience the world and learn new things. And the great thing is that both of those are really valid interpretations and valid experiences, and Barakamon again really emphasizes that both are good. Neither is more important or more valid or the correct way to live your life. It's more so noting the differences where, you know, it is fantastic if you're in a small community where if something goes wrong, you have people who you can rely on. The community can really come together for whether it's just like day-to-day events or, you know, a larger community gathering, or in kind of a disaster, helping people through grief or through emergency or whatever. But also and also the safety or the familiarity of having people who know you and who understand you and who have just always been a part of your life. There's safety in that. There's a lot of comfort that people get from that. And it's also why, you know, it is really important to have a really strong community around you. And half of that work is done when you live in a small town like this. But also, by that same token, it can be really suffocating and ostracizing and just highly, highly stressful living in a small community where everyone knows you or thinks they know you, that has certain expectations of you because of your family or your past behavior or whatever else it is. People know everything about your life, so they will remember that you had a really messy divorce, or you were the kid that, was really bad, and so everyone just have these assumptions about you, or just will assume that you'll take over your dad's business because, 3 generations of your family have done that. And so, again, on the opposite of that, the anonymity of being in a big city and not having like an entire community breathing down your neck or having expectations for you or knowing every single thing about you is really freeing when you're leaving that situation. When you go to the big city where nobody knows you, where you are free to totally reinvent yourself, to start afresh, to start your life anew, to meet people that you would never have come across before, in having exposure and experiences with races or religions or whatever, just general communities, sexuality communities, the queer community, or certain religious communities, or just things that you've never even considered, like vegetarianism. There's so many things that you can learn when you leave an insular, bubbled community where everything has been a particular way, is typically set in that way, and may change slowly, but not nearly will have the... A lot of people won't even have the opportunity to interact. It's why travel, international travel specifically, is so, I say, so important for people to do, because it gives you a perspective outside of what you think you know and what your life, your day-to-day. And obviously not everyone has the luxury of being able to do that, but just even leaving where you were born and raised to go to either, further your education or for work or for whatever, a lot of times that you are a bit of a fish out of water. You don't know what the norms are now, and you don't necessarily have somebody to tell you, oh, these are the norms. You have to figure that shit out yourself. It's great. I really love Barakamon. I think it really balances those two sides very, very well. Plus, it's just really funny. The artwork is really sweet as well. We have some bonus comics in this particular volume, 4-koma most notably, although the series itself isn't 4-koma. We also have some artwork in the back here in this particular volume. And I find it really wonderful that we did get the guidebook for this series. We don't always get this type of additional release when it comes to series. So obviously this title did well enough that Yen Press thought it was a good investment and were willing to make it. Yeah, everyone go read Barakamon or watch the show. I think it's a little more saccharine. I don't think it's as balanced a look at, city life versus country living, but I do think it's very good. It is worth the watch. Naru, the little girl, is fantastic. Honda is a fantastic character. Really, the whole cast is great. And I also encourage you to read Sasuke Yoshino's other works. We do have another one of her series, shorter, currently available in English, completed. It's also really good. So yeah, Barakamon, give it a try if you haven't. A one and done omnibus volume from a publisher that I do have quite a few releases from, but they're not as prolific as some of the main publishers. It's one that I have been looking forward to. I haven't had the chance to read because I literally got it like 2 hours ago. But this is Usumaru Furia's The Music of Marie, put out by One Piece Books. I don't know anything about this, but I do know Usumaru Furia's works. I know that the translation and English team, I should say, are all really, from what I could tell from social media, they were all really excited about this particular series. It's one that a lot of people really love, so I am really looking forward to giving it a shot. It also, it has color pages in here. I think it's a 2-in-1 volume, I don't actually know. But you may be familiar with Usumaru Furia's version of No Longer Human, the manga adaptation of the novel of the same name. But I, personally, he has also done Lechi Light Club, which is a single volume release. I think Vertical put that out. But specifically to me, my favorite of Furia's work from the past has been Genkaku Picasso, a 3-volume series that was released by Viz. And yeah, I just from flipping through, that's kind of the vibe that this is giving me, so I am really looking forward to this one. I feel like Furia's done something else that I'm forgetting and people are going to be upset at me for forgetting. But I do enjoy his work quite a bit. I think his stuff, of what I've read, is a bit out there. He can be kind of similar but different vibes to someone like Inuyasha, but I'm just really excited for this particular release, and I'm looking forward to reading it. We have some final volumes that have completed series. So these series are now finished in my personal collection. Some that I still need to read. Others, I do need to read both of these, to be perfectly honest, but one of these series I haven't read at all yet. The other I have been reading as I've gotten the volumes. And so first up is another quite old, very out of print, I would say, hard to find release. This is from a publisher that no longer exists, similarly to CMX, but it is not. It is not CMX. This was released in 2000. So this is a book that is 20 years old, over 20 years old. And this is volume 3 of Joan by Yoshikazu Yasuhiko. This is the third and final volume of the series. If the name is familiar, then you probably know him from his Gundam Origin manga, which was put out by Vertical. Similarly to that series, this is a comic completely in color. This is a, fictionalization or a historical retelling of Joan of Arc, which is a very interesting, or who is a very interesting historical figure. Obviously, I'm sure most people know who Joan of Arc is. If you don't, a very notable French teenager who led French troops against the English and ultimately was burnt at the stake by the English for being a witch. Well, for many things, but notably for being a witch. So this is a series, as I said, full color, really lovely book put together by Comics One. And although it does read left to right, so in a more traditional comic style, I guess, and that this is the era of when manga was being flipped, this series isn't actually flipped. I think both this and Gundam The Origin are left to right read comics. That's just how this creator writes his comics or draws his comics. I don't know the specifics as to why, but as someone who is a fan of historical fiction, of European history, well, most history, but European history, and especially this kind of period of the French-English wars, and Joan of Arc again is a very notable individual who has really captured the popular culture. I think a lot of people and a lot of history, a lot of historians have a real infatuation with her and her achievements, her faith, her dedication to country, etc., etc. So yeah, I haven't read this one yet, but I look forward to it. And at 3 volumes, I don't want to say this is an easy series to find. I don't think it is. It is out of print. Obviously, with these volumes coming out so long ago, they just would be scarce anyway. But I didn't pay a huge amount for any of the 3 volumes, and I'm happy that I was able to invest the time into it. If you are interested in Joan of Arc or just French history or whatever, or just Yoshikazu Yasuhiko's work, then might be worth having a search for them. But again, I don't know how easy that would be to do. Is the other final volume that I got this month, and which is much more recent. It actually came out this month. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but not for want to. I just literally got it yesterday and haven't had the time. And this is the fourth and final volume of number 5 by Taiyo Matsumoto. This is an odd one. And Matsumoto's stuff can be a bit esoteric, but this one especially so. This is the story of a guy, Yuri, who's number 5. He was part of like this elite squad of soldiers, but ended up killing one of the other soldiers and kidnapped his girlfriend, the girl he liked. I don't know, this Matryoshka looking woman here, woman, girl, I don't know, there's a lot of weirdness going on, and I've only read the first half. I've only read 2 out of the 4 volumes so far, so if things get clearer, then I don't know at what point. But this one is one that I think will benefit from rereads. There's a lot of stuff that isn't inherently obvious within Matsumoto's work. A lot of stuff that is left to symbology, to just kind of a larger inference. And a lot of the story is often told through his artwork. You see that in stuff like Sunny, in Go-Go Monster, in Tekken Concrete, in Ping Pong even. And so this one, I think, is probably, in my opinion, not his strongest series. I would put that towards Tekken Concrete or Ping Pong or Sunny, personally. Castle of the Louvre also, maybe. But I do think it's a very interesting curiosity. It's certainly involved, and when you're reading it, it draws you in, and it has, like a lot of Taiyo Matsumoto's works, it focuses, although these characters seem to be more adult than some of his previous protagonists, there's still this level of childhood innocence or curiosity and imagination within this one that I think really is played to. I spoke about this series a little bit on the Manga podcast that I co-host with my good friend Ray, and she mentioned that this really feels like, kids, like a session of make-believe, when kids are playing and they just start creating stories and adventures for themselves, and a lot of the stuff within the first volume or so feels like that, and I feel like that's kind of a trend throughout this particular series of a certain level of creative liberty being told or being used when telling this story by the characters, and that whether that's just due to unreliable narration or a larger aspect that hasn't been revealed yet. Obviously, I don't know, because I haven't finished reading this. But I am really happy that it's completed. This is a series that was, curiously enough, put out by Viz in the past and dropped at 2 volumes. I don't think a lot of people had hope that it would return, but obviously they were proved wrong, because this series is now available in its entirety in English. I think, again, this is a great example of how much the English market has changed over the last decade or so. A series that was deemed, not profitable or not something that manga fans would be interested in, 15 years ago, is now fully available and sits alongside pretty much all of Matsumoto's major works. The only one that we're missing, I believe, is his 8-volume historical series, which I cannot for the life of me remember. But if you do like Matsumoto's stuff, I would presume you're already reading this. If you like stories about childhood and growing up and finding your place and the importance of maintaining this childlike wonder or happiness or pride as well, this innocence, this adventure, this sense of anything's possible, then I would recommend Matsumoto's other works before this, stuff like, again, Sunny or Ping Pong or Tech on Concrete. You really can't go wrong. His stuff is great, and really, I mean, it's just really nice to have more Matsumoto available. Yeah. We have the ongoing manga. So I'll start with the small trim stuff. So things that aren't quite quote unquote normal trim size. And so typically our 7Cs volumes. Both these series that I'm going to be talking about next are from 7Cs. But this first that I'm going to show off is the 2 volumes of Skip and Loafer by Misaki Takamatsu. We have volumes 2 and 3. This is a series about 2 teenagers, a girl and a boy. The girl here, Mitsumi, she has recently moved to the big city in order to follow her dreams of kind of having this perfect, amazing life in which she's a CEO by 25 and is married and has 400 friends and has achieved everything she ever wants. And so far, so good. She's very popular in her hometown. She has lots of friends. She's really smart, top of her class. And she's also the top marks for the entry test for this new school that she's going to in Tokyo. She's going to be staying with, I think it's a family friend. I don't remember if it's like a family friend or her, like a relative, a cousin or something, who lives in Tokyo. So she's going to move out with her. And she's like, oh, it'll be great. I'll have this wonderful debut. It'll be super popular. Obviously, everyone will recognize that I'm so smart because I got the highest grades. And I'm just like so friendly and cool and popular. It'll be fine. Which is, 1, arrogant, but 2, I feel like a lot of 15-year-olds might have that idea of themselves. But what she doesn't know is that her friends and her parents are a little bit worried for her because although she is very popular, she has lots of friends, she is really smart, she doesn't have a lot of I don't want to say she doesn't have a lot of common sense, but she's not exactly like cool, right? She's popular in her hometown and has a bunch of friends because they've known her forever. They've grown up with her since they were all kids. And they understand her quirks and understand like how she operates. They understand her personality. Whereas certain aspects of her personality aren't gonna fly with, kids who are a little bit more metropolitan, a little bit more cynical or experienced in some things. And Mitsuki doesn't just Mitsuki. She just doesn't recognize that that's an option. She just assumes she's going to be super cool and popular. Spoiler, she is not. Namely because although the person that she's living with now, she, asks her, oh, do you need help getting to your new school? Because obviously you've just moved here, you don't know how to get there, you've never used like the train system at all in Tokyo. There's a lot more people. I don't want you to get lost. And she's like, no, it's fine. Don't worry. I'll get there. No problem. You really think that that's gonna happen? Don't worry. I'm not a baby. I can make my own way to school. But, of course, she gets lost immediately, has no idea how she's meant to get to school, and she's starting to freak out because she's going to be late for the opening ceremony, opening assembly, that's the word, where she's supposed to be making a speech because she got the highest test scores for the new entries. So she's freaking out, she doesn't really know what to do. She doesn't know who to ask. She doesn't even know where she is. But luckily, a boy who is also starting at this new school, he recognizes her school uniform and is like, "Oh, hey, do you need help getting to our school?" And she's like, "Oh my god, thank you so much." And so he helps her get there, and they are both late, rushing to get to this assembly, which he just doesn't have any investment in getting there, but he recognizes that she wants to get there, so he helps her out. And so she gets to the assembly right in time to make her speech. She's talking, it's going over well, but she's still really stressed, really wound up from the morning, overthinking things. Obviously, she's talking in front of a much larger audience that she's ever done, so she's really nervous. She's kind of coming to terms with the reality that her new life, or that this new school and this new city, is nothing like the town that she's grown up in. And all of this comes to a head during her speech, or just after her speech, where the nerves really overtake her and she is publicly sick. She vomits all over herself in front of everyone, which obviously is not the way to make a cool first impression in front of your peers on the first day of school. So obviously she becomes known as Puke Girl, but optimistic as she is, because she really is, she doesn't have the best social cues, which is her biggest, I guess, weakness, quote unquote. But so she's like, it'll be fine, obviously I didn't get off to the best start the other day, but how long will people remember that? I can still make friends, I can still be cool and popular, but as everyone who goes to high school knows, as soon as you do something like throw up in front of the entire student body, you are absolutely not going to be able to come in 2 days later and make all these friends and be super cool and popular. That's not how the social structure of high school works. And she doesn't really realize that until one of her classmates, she discovers, is the boy that helped her out the first day, and he, despite everything, he really likes her. He thinks that she's really interesting and, for lack of a better word, cool. Not in the sense that normally teenagers see people as cool or popular, but he finds her really interesting, and he really respects her passion for life and her single-mindedness about her goals. He thinks that it's really amazing how organized and how focused she is on the things that she wants to do, all of her plans, because comparatively he's just kind of cruising through life. He doesn't have any large goals that he wants to fulfill. He doesn't see himself as having, achieved X, Y, Z in 5 years. He's just kind of playing it by ear. And obviously, that makes him extremely cool within the normal high school social structure. He's got lots of friends from his, who are going there from middle school. He's not part of any club because he's not that passionate about anything. But meeting this girl and having this insight to this girl, having helped her, who has such a completely different outlook on life, and one that he personally really respects, means that he's totally willing to be her friend and to talk to her and to invite her to things. And through his sheer association with this dude, her massive unpopularity and the idea of her being Puke Girl really starts to ebb as people are like, oh, well, you know, this guy likes her, like, as a, you know, this guy's friends with her, maybe she is cool, maybe there is something, you know, that isn't super embarrassing and lame and whatever. And yeah, that's the story so far. Well, I haven't read these 2 volumes, so there's more, but this is a really sweet story about 2 very different kids. It's who find friendship with each other. It's a romance, slow burn romance as well, so obviously, you know, relationship or feelings bubbling under all of this, but notably, it's about these people who, as I said, are very different personality-wise, but really can appreciate and respect each other for who they are because of their differences. They can find the value or see the value and really highly regard those aspects that they personally don't have. His kind of ease with socialization and having friends and having this laid back nature where he is able to adapt and kind of go with the flow and isn't set within this rigid schedule of goals is really freeing, and something that our main character hasn't ever really had a chance, or hasn't been a way that our main character has ever lived her life. So she finds that really refreshing. And then similarly, our male character, he's never really had someone who's been so goal oriented, has such a clear idea of what they want for their future and how their life is going to go, and put in place, you know, goals to meet, to reach those larger goals, and to be so single-mindedly focused and so hardworkingly just committed to every aspect of, you know, doing things, is something that he's never experienced. He's never lived his life that way, but he really finds it amazing that she can. And it's really good. It's really good. I really like it. And obviously, as the series goes on, we meet more and more of these characters, and they, you know, these smaller friendship groups grow, and they experience different things together, and, you know, their lives are shaped by the people around them. It's really sweet, and I look forward to new volumes whenever they come out. Other small trim ongoing manga. Okay. I previously owned this, and then I sold the couple volumes that I had because I thought it was dropped, and then, like a fool, I checked the scheduling and saw that, hey, wow, for the first time in, 3-4 years, we have a new volume of this being released, and so it hasn't been dropped. Therefore, I can now say that I have had to repurchase, and I now re-own Versailles of the Dead, Volume 2 by Kumiko Suekane. This is another French history reimagining. This is the story of, well, it's a story of historical France, but they're having a zombie problem. They're zombies, and notably, during Marie Antoinette's trip from her homeland of Austria to France in order to marry the Dauphin, her carriage is attacked by zombies, and she is killed in a gruesome manner, in a gruesome manner, and, you know, the French guard, the French royal guard is like, oops, uh-oh, that's not good, when she doesn't show up in time, and they find her carriage just completely destroyed. Notably, it's not good, one, because Marie Antoinette died, but two, the whole reason that, you know, royal marriages happen is for political peace and various deal making. So France really doesn't want to cause, you know, a skirmish between themselves and Austria, especially because they have zombies to deal with. They don't know where these zombies are coming from, how they're... they're all very confused. But thankfully for the French royal family, with a caveat, with an asterisk there, with the thankfully, Marie's twin brother, Albert, he was traveling alongside her as, just to be her companion, and also kind of her bodyguard or secondary, just to join her in Paris, because his family has no need for him, basically, which is kind of shitty, but whatever. And so because of his striking look, they are twins. So, I mean, in real life, fraternal twins do not look identical, but these two look pretty similar. And so the French royal family asks him, hey, so this is kind of a messy situation for all of us, and we really don't, want to start a war with your country. And obviously, that this was an accident, that she was killed by zombies, but how do we explain that? You survived. That's amazing, right? And rather than send you back home and, your family be upset with you or upset with the whole situation, why don't you pretend to be Marie? So you get married to the Delphine, so nobody has to know. Nobody has to know. And then it'll just be fine. You'll be able to live this life of luxury. The Delphine doesn't even, you won't have to worry about him. He's not that interested in, obviously he will know, so he's not gonna do anything to you. And you'll just be living this sham of a life. But hey, it's a nicer sham than the one you were living before. And so our main character's like, you know what? Alright, I'll do that. And so, as I said, he becomes his sister, Marie Antoinette, for the French court and the wider European population recognize him as such. The royal family know, the French royal family, so not even the Austrian royal family, they know that is actually Marie's twin brother. But also, he was also in that carriage. How did he avoid getting attacked by zombies? How did he survive when his sister didn't? And the answer to that, my friends, might be demonic possession. We don't quite know at this point, but there is something unearthly lurking in this boy's personality, in his mind, something that might not be a good thing for the French royal family. So it's obviously a historical, supernatural retelling. Obviously. I find it very intriguing. I really like Suikane's works. I really like her interpretation of historical figures. This is not her first series focused on notable historical figures. Her other longer series, After School Charisma, which you may or may not know, most of the characters in that are the clones of notable historical figures, including Marie Antoinette, Marie Curie, Rasputin, Hitler, Einstein, Mozart, Napoleon. There's a lot. There's more, and I can't even remember them all. But if there's been a notable historical figure within the world of that series, they have been cloned in order to be great leaders or, artistic geniuses or whatever their original did. In order to bring more of that energy, bring more of that prior genius back to humanity. Or in the cases of individuals like Hitler and Rasputin. They have been cloned in order to, like, one, for kind of this karmic redemption, revenge, depending on who's funding these things, but also as a way to kind of channel that passion or leadership into less destructive tendencies, hopefully causing less genocides. I don't know how well that ever works, because obviously people are shaped by their lives and their upbringing and all these sorts of things. So, you know, I feel like it wouldn't go very well. This is not something that would ever be able to be doable in real life, but you know. This fiction, it doesn't matter. Anyway, there's a lot of curiosities and interesting things brought up in that series on those themes as well, of like the difference between these clones and their sense of self when they are most notably being cloned. They were brought into existence in order to become the people that they're cloned from. Like, it's really interesting. And yeah, I just really like the idea of, like, what if Marie Antoinette was actually a cross-dressing boy who may have been possessed by a demon in a world where there's just a bunch of zombies as well. Also, there's, like, young Napoleon Bonaparte. It's this whole thing. I'm really into it. I find it's so crazy and weird and interesting that how can you not just want to read it? I don't know. But I'm looking forward to Volume 3 finally being released after 3 years. Thanks, Seven Seas. Yeah. It's not a long series either. It's only 5 volumes. So if you are wanting to try it, do, because now you can. Now it's continuing. So I can say without guilt, hey guys, we're going to be seeing more volumes of this. It hasn't been abandoned. We have the ongoing Standard Trim manga, a whole bunch of shoujo beat titles. Beware. And starting off with a fantastic series that I just adore, love and adore, and has quickly jumped to the top of my reading list every time I get a new volume, and that is My Love Mix-Up Volume 3. This is by Arako and Wataru Hinekure. This is an ongoing series about a boy who likes a girl who likes a boy, and therefore he starts, like, through some shenanigans, gets confused by one boy. Okay, so anyway, we have our main character who he really likes one of his classmates, big crush on her, but one day he borrows her eraser and finds another boy's name on it with a heart, and he's heartbroken. He knows, like, oh, she's got a big crush on one of his other classmates, and he starts to kind of seethe. He's quite upset, obviously, and it's like, oh, what's so good about this other guy? But he drops the eraser during the test, and the guy whose name is on the eraser picks it up, and he sees his name with the heart, and it's like, okay, and then sees that it's this, and, like, gives it back to this boy, and he's like, wait a minute, does that mean he has a crush on me? And being, like, a solid dude, our main character, he doesn't want to say, like, oh, it's just a mix-up, it's actually this girl's eraser, because he doesn't want to, you know, say that to him and cause a misunderstanding, or, well, he doesn't want to to share her secrets, quote unquote, with her crush. So he's like, yeah, you know, that is my eraser. Sorry, I have a crush on you. Sorry, mate. Like, you don't have to take it seriously. Don't worry about me. I knew that, like, things weren't gonna work out. So, you know, whatever. But this other guy, Ida, he's a solid dude. He's kind of like, well, no, like, this is the first time anyone's confessed to me, and obviously it took a lot of, like, courage and a lot of hard work and bravery for you to admit that to me and to tell me your feelings. So I'm gonna, like, seriously think about it, and I don't want to just brush you off because that's not fair for you. And so our main character, Aoki, he's like, man, he's a solid dude. Like, that's really sweet. But also, I don't have a crush on him. I'm just trying to save this girl's feelings. But I can't, like, I'll just play along. And he's just gonna say that, sorry, I'm not into you. And I'll be, quote unquote, heartbroken for like 2 minutes. Or pretend to be, you know, heartbroken, but it's fine because I don't like him, so it's fine. I am actually heartbroken because the girl that I'm helping, I do have a crush on her, and I know that she doesn't like me, so, you know, I'm upset, and there's just a lot of shenanigans. Anyway, turns out that all of this was a big misunderstanding anyway, because the name on the eraser was another one of their classmates, who's our main character's kind of best friend, Aoki's best friend, Aida, but the A had been erased, had been worn off the eraser. So instead it said Ida. So initially, so she didn't have feelings for Ida, but she did have feelings for this other boy, who isn't our main character. But over the course of him, like, pretending, quote unquote, to have feelings for this Ida boy, he actually caught feelings. So now he actually does have a crush on this other boy. And also, the girl, she thought that both she and the main character had a crush on Aida, like his mess. It's this whole big mess. Anyway, it's super sweet, really wonderful. This manga really said bisexual rights, and I'm here for it. It's fantastic, really funny and lovely. And I've said this on social media, and I've said this with series before. I don't know if necessarily with this series before, but for those who might be familiar, Aroko does the artwork for the series. She also did the artwork for My Love Story, which had a lot of really great comedy bits in it. Was really, really wonderful to read. Really solid story. I really enjoy My Love Story. This one, but that kind of the premise of that one is that the main character, the dude, isn't, you know, this typical shoujo romance lead hot guy. He's just like the epitome of manliness, which is not, it's kind of the complete opposite of what a boy normally looks like in a girl's comic. So a lot of the comedy is at the expense of, like, this dude is kind of goofy looking for a girl's comic. And also, like, that he's such a solid dude, and, like, everybody really, especially girls, judge him for his looks because, you know, he's not super handsome, but his girlfriend really loves him, thinks he's really cool, and thinks he's really handsome, and he's just, like, such a good guy that he does win over all of her female friends and blah blah blah. But again, part of the joke is that he has his really good friend is the kind of, like, quote unquote hot guy that all the girls want to date, but he just has zero interest because all of the girls well, one, he's kind of like always surrounded by these girls who want to date him, but also because a lot of them are really mean to his best friend and really judgmental, and he's grown really cynical about people, you know, getting close to either of them, because he's been burnt enough, or he's seen his friend heartbroken enough, because of underhanded behavior in the past. And so they're like, that's a good series. Go read it. It's not super long. But I really like this series, even more so than that one, because our main character, like, he's not this, like, a super hot guy, but he's a more typical shoujo manga male lead looking dude. And still, Ariko allows him, or gives him the wackiest, weirdest expressions, makes him make the ugliest faces when appropriate. It's just so good. It makes it funnier. I'll see if I can find some of the faces, but this is just an overwhelmingly great. Oh, it's so, look at those expressions. There's so much emotion being just shown through the artwork in how these characters react to each other. And it's so sweet. This particular volume, our main couple, these two boys, go on their first date, and it's real. Aw, you guys, it's so good. Anyway, if you're wanting a really solid high school romance series that features queer relationships that don't treat them like jokes, especially when it comes to bisexuality, in which the characters' feelings are validated and not questioned or regarded as, you know, people having to stick to one or the other, you know. Check this one out. It's really great. It doesn't pretend to be something it's not, and I find it hilarious and heartwarming and just fab. Just fab. This is another Shoujo Beat title, another ongoing title, one that I love, and oh god, it was such a good volume! This is volume 18 of Snow White with Red Hair by Sorata Akiduki. This is an ongoing shoujo story about, it's kind of like got a royalty setting about a girl who, after running away from her home country, meets a prince who invites her to his home country in order to allow her to study as a herbalist, more specifically a court herbalist, and it's about their romance and the various people in their lives. For me, as someone who I'm not reading subtext. There's some pretty obvious OT3 vibes in this between our two main characters, Zen and Shirayuki, as well as Shirayuki's bodyguard, Obi, who's on the cover here. Guys, if they aren't dating, the three of them, I've been lied to this whole series, because oh my god, it's so blatant, and every volume it gets more blatant. Anyway, we're not talking about that right now, except for that is my agenda, and I'm not pulling it out of thin air. It exists, and it is recognized by many people. I am not the one who's incorrect. Anyway, this particular volume wraps up the story arc that has been from the last couple volumes, a kind of coup, skirmish happening between different factions. But it also means that Zen and Shirayuki are able to see each other for the first time in a long time. And it's really sweet, and they're together, and it ends with the possibility of them spending some more time together, because although they're together now, they do still have like very important jobs in different parts of the country that they are dedicated to, and they have goals that they want to achieve, and so, which is why they've been apart for so long. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about this particular series, is how well balanced of a couple our main romantic leads are. Both Shiroyuki and Zen have goals. They are very invested in each other and are invested in their relationship, but they also recognize that they have personal goals that can only be achieved when they're not together, or can only be achieved by by having to do things that they don't necessarily want to do, i.e. by being apart. And their larger goals are more important than their short-term happiness or the familiarity and comfort of being close to the person that you care about, especially when it's like a short-term separation in the larger scheme of things. Obviously, that doesn't mean that it's any less hard being away from people you care about, but it's with the understanding that, you're being supported and both sides are supporting each other. I just really like that both of these characters exist as their own person outside of their relationship, which isn't always the case within romance series. A lot of the time, especially in manga, one of the leads, one of the side of the couple, really is just kind of a trope to fit a readership's interest. They don't have much of a personality outside of being a boyfriend or girlfriend to the main character, and that's something that Snow White with the red hair doesn't have. I think it has a great character writing for all of the characters. I really find all of the supporting cast really intriguing. I'm very invested in their personal stories as well. It's just good. It's pretty. It's interesting. It has a much larger plot when considering the aspects of these political ongoings and Shiroyuki's involvement with being a herbalist and how that has shaped her decisions, and how people have grown to rely on her for that. It's just really good. And I don't really need to tell you guys that. You guys know that. But I'm really, really happy that this series did ultimately get licensed. It wasn't one that I think a lot of people expected to get licensed, because it is, well, it was a little bit older. When it got licensed, it had already had two anime series released many years prior, so it wasn't like a freshly, hot off the presses, super in the anime and manga sphere's scope. And it's longer and ongoing at 20 plus volumes, 25 or 26 at this point, that it just didn't feel like a possibility. And so when Shoujo Beat Viz did license it, I was very excited and very happy, and continue to be very happy, because it's a very good series. And if you like romance stories, if you like this kind of royalty setting, if you like a couple that has really strong personalities and personal goals that they follow, if you like kind of political scheming and stuff like that as well, then check out Snow White with the red hair. It's really good. It's really, really good. I have another ongoing volume, or another ongoing series from Shoujo Beat. I haven't read this one because I'm a couple volumes behind on the series, although I hope to rectify that soon. This is volume 6 of Skip Beat. This is by Yoshiki Nakamura. and is the story of a teenage girl called Kyoko, who, after having her heart broken by her boyfriend, who is a musician, like a pop star, she decides that, you know what, screw that guy. I can be famous and popular, more popular than him. I'm going to become a superstar. So she joins a talent agency, but because of her cynicism and broken heart and need for revenge, she is kind of singled out, and although she's approved, well, no, she's rejected from the main kind of talent agency, but she is given the opportunity to work for them in this new Love Me section, which is basically just a way for odd jobs to get done, but also a way for her to rebuild her love and trust in other people, because the manager, the CEO of this talent agency, is like, you can't be an entertainer if you don't feel love. That's just not gonna fly. And so she's like, all right. It's really good. I love the series so much. Kyoko is an extremely charming and engaging protagonist. Ren, who's her kind of romantic interest, who is the hottest male celebrity around, super talented actor, who may or may not have a history with Kyoko that she doesn't realize or remember, but he sure does. Is really good. This series is a classic, really, at this point. It's long, obviously, at 46 volumes and ongoing. It feels like it's wrapping up a little bit. More and more things are being shared, and, you know, truths coming to light and things like that. But it's one of those series that, although it's so long, it's still so good, really engaging. The first time I had tried it, which via the anime, I was only going to watch a couple of episodes, and then I ended up watching, I think, 90% of it in one night, and then the last, 2 or 3 episodes the next night. Is so good. Oh my god, it's so good. In saying that, it is, especially the earlier stuff, is very of its time, just stylistically. Lots of pointy chins and long necks. And although I do enjoy this series, I don't think that Nakamura is inherently the best artist when it comes to anatomy. Her people can be a bit janky looking, and again, that also is a little bit of its era, kind of, again, super long bodies, really strangely weird hands, things out of proportion, chins you could use to slice with. It's a bit all over the place. It has, the art and the character designs have softened up a bit and gotten better over time, but there will still be occasions where you're like, wow, there's some wonk here. It's but in this case, this is a story that I just love, and despite its flaws artistically, I think storytelling wise is just fantastic. The writing is great. It also is a really good insight into the difficult nature of the entertainment industry. It's obviously not as hypercritical as something like Helter Skelter, but it doesn't completely pretend like it's all fun and games and super easy or a dream, right? It kind of rides that line in the same way that Nana does, or Kageki Shoujo as well. It doesn't, there's some not good things about this industry, but it's not as scathing as something like Helter Skelter, or Not Your Idol as well is probably a good example of that too. But Skip Beat is wonderful. I encourage you to try it either through the anime or the manga. It is longer, but it is well worth your time, and it's one that isn't, I'm not going to say it's not popular. I think it has a lot of very dedicated fans. It's had people who have loved it for years and years and years at this point. But it's also not a title that I think has gotten a lot of new popularity. I don't think there's necessarily been a lot of new generation of fans who have tried this one because of either it looks outdated or they just don't even know about it. I do think that for shoujo fans, 46 volumes can be a bit intimidating in ways that, like, Shonen Jump series 46 volumes really isn't that unusual or unheard of. So, you know, playing to different strengths there. But it's good. Check it out if you haven't. It's super, super good. For the Shoujo Beat titles, we have another one of my favorite ongoing series. One that I cannot read yet because I don't have the previous volume. Although I ordered them from the same bookstore, they just haven't gotten the last volume in yet. I'm so annoyed because I want to read it. This is Yona of the Dawn, volume 35 by Mizuho Kusanagi. This is an ongoing shoujo, I guess, action-adventure, political drama / romance about a princess called Yona who, after being ousted from the castle after her father is murdered by her cousin, this is not spoilers, this happens in the first volume, she discovers that she is the reincarnation of this legendary heroic figure called the Crimson Dragon King, the one who unified the country in which Yona's family has ruled over. And the Crimson Dragon King, in the way he was able to do so is because he was, you know, beloved by the heavens and was given 4 dragon warriors. And so after finding out this whole prophecy or whatever, Yona and her good friend / bodyguard, childhood friend, Hawk, who is also in love with her, go on this, you know, journey to find these 4 dragons, which coincidentally are on this cover. So we have the white dragon Gija, the green dragon Jehi, the blue dragon Shinha, and the yellow dragon Zeno. All great, all love them, they're wonderful. They also have another young guy called Yun, who's basically the one who keeps them all alive because he's the only one who knows how, like, cook and do medicine and stuff. He's Team Mom. He's the best. But yeah, and it didn't take her that long to find all of these dragons, and now at this point things have really taken a shift. But a lot of the early stuff was her traveling around the country, discovering all of the issues that were happening. But as things have gone on, Yona and Hawk and the rest of the team have learned more and more about the current king, Yona's cousin Swan, his circumstances, maybe why he had a coup and killed the previous king, and the circumstances of both of their births and things like that. It's so good. If you're not reading Yona out of some dumb perception that it's a shoujo, so you won't like it very much, or that you think it's just a romance or something, you're missing out on one of the best political dramas, with some of the best action and well-developed characters, and also, like, really solid comedy amidst all of the other stuff going on. You're missing out is basically what I'm trying to say, and this is one that has a really broad appeal. And I would say that a lot of people are reading it. It does help that it did have a fairly popular anime from a couple years ago, and I would say, although I don't dislike the anime, I think it's solid, it also isn't even... having read the manga it's not fair because obviously the manga at this point in English is at 35 volumes. In Japanese it's several volumes even more. There's so much that's happened that the anime, what it covers is with the first, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 volumes, barely feels like it's hit the prologue part of the story. Like, it feels like it's the prologue to the larger actual story, because in the anime, she barely, just by the end, finds the last dragon, and the whole series, the whole dynamic of the group really shifts a lot once the team's together, as it were. So if you watch the anime and you really enjoyed it and you're waiting for more, or you wish they'd make a new season, or you just haven't gotten around to reading the manga because you're like, oh well, I don't like reading the stuff that I've already watched, just read the manga. It's so much better. It's so good. And it is legitimately one of the best things that I'm currently following right now. It's one that when I have all the volumes, I read right away. And then I'm always left hungering for more because it's just that good. So, moral of the story, read Yona, everybody. Shonen Jump stuff. This is the only, I guess, true quote-unquote Jump title that I have for this pickups video. And this is the 10th volume of Chainsaw Man. I think it might be the penultimate one. Maybe there's 2 after this. I can't quite remember how long this first part of Chainsaw Man is. I just said that Yona is one of my favorite ongoing series. It is. That's not a lie. Chainsaw Man, oh my god, I adore this series so much. Longtime viewers know that I don't want to keep going on tangents about this creator, but I really have grown to love Tatsuki Fujimoto's work over the last several years. For as many problems and as problematic as Fire Punch is, I do think that there is solid themes and morals that series tries to approach that gets lost or disregarded because of the shock value or the kind of in-your-face elements and just every content warning needed that series has. But I think that Chainsaw Man, although it does also, it's very in your face, it's hyper everything. Gore, hyper violent, not hyper sexualized, but it is crass, because that's what happens when you have a 15-year-old boy as your protagonist, a realistic 15-year-old boy as your protagonist. And it's a lot of things, but all of Fujimoto's work, we see it with Look Back, his previous one-shot, as well as Sayonara Eri, or Goodbye Eri, which is his most recent one-shot, which is fantastic and I encourage everyone to read. And even with Fire Punch, these characters live in worlds that are just absolutely... Look Back less so, but these characters live in terrible worlds or are in terrible situations that you wouldn't want people to be in. Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch, these are not settings that you would wish upon your worst enemy, right? It's not a good time. And because of that, the characters make a lot of really tough decisions and they're not inherently good people. They might hurt each other, they might kill people, they might, do the worst things in order to survive, but that element or that understandability of human survival and doing what it takes to just get through things in one, alive, is really, really well done. And more notably than all of that, I think that there's a real hope and a real appreciation for this life's simple pleasures, whether it's, the artistic creation or enjoying a good movie. That's Fujimoto's big thing. But the simple joys in searching and discovering the small stuff, or the pieces of art especially, that really resonates with you emotionally and on a fundamental level, that you may have to wade through a whole bunch of schlock and a whole bunch of dumb stuff to find, but has made, in doing so and finding it, has made that whole journey and that whole experience worth it. And I think, for some people that might be the perfect analogy for Fire Punch or even Chainsaw Man, is that there's a lot of stuff, right? There's a lot of, whether it's, crass humor or violence or gore or weird monsters or unlikable characters or whatever else that you have to experience and are a part of these stories that you may not love or even like necessarily, but the larger messaging or the larger themes or the larger execution or the finale or how certain storylines are resolved or how certain characters are portrayed, or what they represent, might be worth it. Might be worth you, figuring it out and saying like, okay, I don't like this, but I do love everything else. And one of the things that I really, really love about Fujimoto's works, and Chainsaw Man displays it perfectly, is how immaculately Fujimoto recontextualizes things, and how certain, take for example, good example is Denji, our main character, who at the beginning does feel kind of crass. All he talks about is how he wishes he could touch a girl's boobs and all things, which in any other manga, or most other manga, I would find incredibly irritating and not a likable trait whatsoever. Especially most other shonen manga, but how it's framed in Chainsaw Man makes all the difference, because yes, Denji wants to touch a boob, but also he's a 15-year-old who literally has never had any kind of stability or family structure or security in his whole life. That small part of normalcy, that idea that he's just a kid who has the same pubescent urges that any other kid does, is really, really important. And I think it makes him a stronger character, and it makes you as a reader more sympathetic or more empathetic to who he is and why he might have the idea of man, I really just I'd love to see a girl in real life one time. It's actually kind of heartwarming, which is not what you normally say about a character who wants to touch a boob. But Chainsaw Man is fantastic. We're in the end stretch with this. I'll try not to open too much because I don't want to get to too many spoilers, but it is fantastic and I want everyone to read it. I'm looking forward to the anime coming soon, and I will cry. The manga is apparently coming back in summer this year, some northern hemisphere summer this year, so very, very soon, and I can't wait. And I can't wait for Viz to put out Look Back, and I can't wait for them to announce that they're going to be putting out Goodbye Eri in print, because of course they will, and I will buy that. Tatsuki Fujimoto has really kind of jumped to my list of creators where I will automatically just try their new work no matter what, because I enjoy them, and I really haven't disliked overall any of his works. He's quickly really, his works have really become something that I look forward to whenever he is creating a new comic. And it is, he dials right into my particular brand of weird as well. So I'm not, you guys, especially you guys who hang around and have watched my channel before, you know that I'm into a lot of weird shit. I'm not particular about anything being overtly gory or crass or even hypersexualized. As long as it's done well, I don't care. And for all of its faults and as many issues and problematic, horrifying, potentially triggering elements that are in Fujimoto's works, I personally don't have a problem, so I do always go in without a worry. But I do like to mention that they are, maybe look up a triggers list before you dive feet first into his titles, because they're not all the most approachable sorts of things. But yeah, Chainsaw Man, fantastic. Cannot wait for the rest of it in print and for the continuation later this year. Other Viz standard edition that I got, Shonen standard edition that I got for this month is put out by Jump, the US Jump, but technically it's a Jump Plus title. It's one that I love, one that has gotten a lot of acclaim recently because of its new smash hit anime adaptation, which I haven't watched yet, but I've heard nothing but good things, and that is, of course, Spy Family. This is Volume 7 by Tatsuya Endo. This is the story of a spy who basically, in order to do his mission good, he needs a family, and so he adopts a little girl and quickly marries this woman who agrees to marry him very quickly, and hiding the fact that he is a spy. But what he doesn't know is that the woman he's married, the reason she agreed so quickly is because she needs cover. She doesn't get dubbed into the secret police for being single, because there's been a lot of been a lot of young women who have been dubbed in to the secret police because they're single, as being spies. So she's wanting to avoid that, but not because she is totally innocent and doesn't want the secret police sniffing around. I mean, she doesn't, but she's not innocent. The actuality is that she's a elite assassin, and so many nights she is off murdering people, going on her own jobs, and so she's keeping that from her new husband. So they just think they're kind of like normal family, whatever, and then they have this little girl, and what neither of them know is that this little girl has the power to read minds, so she knows everything. She understands that both of her parents are badasses, but she can't, it's a secret that they're both badasses, even to either parent. So she knows all of these secrets, and so she knows that her dad has like this really elite mission. So she's trying to befriend this boy, sort of. The mission is that she befriends this boy who is on the cover here. But she doesn't actually like this boy. She thinks he's a pain in the ass and doesn't get along with him. He has a big fat crush on her, though he would never admit it. And so it's kind of that a little bit of I like you bullying type of dynamic going on between those two. And then they also have a dog later on in the series as well, who also has his own kind of powers. This series is so funny. I don't really need to introduce the series, I don't think, because most people know it. Most people are either reading it via the Jump app. It's hugely popular. The anime is so good. It's really heartwarming and sweet as well, but just hilarious. The spy shenanigans is great. This cute little girl who can read minds, her shenanigans are great. There's a chapter in this volume, I think, where Damien and his friends go on this like outdoors trip, and it's so funny. That was really a great characterization chapter for him. I love Spy Family, and as you might have seen in that flick through, the last chapter is opening up to the arc on the boat or the cruise, which is fairly recent. So we are catching up pretty quickly with the print volumes as well. I love this series. It's so good. I know for a fact that the anime is boosting interest in the manga. But of course, with the current supply chain issues and paper shortages and things like that, I don't think a lot of the earlier volumes are still in print currently. Like they're not out of print, but they haven't been restocked. I know this because my local comic store, when I went to pick up this volume, they're like, "Oh, Spy Family, that's really popular right now." And I said, "Yeah, I haven't watched the show yet, but I've heard good things." And the guy was like, "Yeah, everybody's asking for the new, like, the early volumes, but we can't get them because they don't exist right now. But these are new releases, so you're fine." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm lucky. I've been following it from the beginning." So I'm good. I'm set. I've got my books. But for those of you in the audience who may be watching and you are in that predicament, but where you're wanting to read it, but because you're really enjoying the anime right now, I would encourage you to try it out via either the Shonen Jump app or Manga Plus as well, which is the global English release of it. Read them there and then enjoy, and then so you're not kind of scrambling to pay out of print prices for these books that will absolutely go back into print. Do not pay like $50 or $35 for one of these volumes because they're not worth it. Just wait, just be patient. And if you really need to read the comic because you are really enjoying it, just read it through the legal apps, right? Like, it's exactly the same. One's just on the screen, one's on paper. And I know people make arguments that they don't like to read on screens, and I understand that, but a lot of people read scans on screens anyway, so it's not that much different. So that argument doesn't work very well for me. And if that is the case, that you just really don't want to read on the screen through the app or anything, then go to your library. I almost guarantee that they will have this series. You might just have to wait a little bit because if it is that popular, if your library system is large and it has a lot of people wanting certain things, then you might have to wait. But yeah, Spy Family is good, and I don't think that's a controversial statement. I'd say most people would agree with that. And I'm really happy that I've gotten this newest volume. Large Trim manga, ongoing manga. This is another one of my, I love this series. It is almost quintessentially my essence bottled. For those who are frequent, subscribers or frequent viewers of my channel, you know that I'm into weird, spooky shit. I love yokai stories. I love stuff that are kind of like low-key horror. I like high-key horror too, but weird shit, spooky shit, I enjoy. I make that no secret. And so this series really plays into a lot of my favorite things, and that is, of course, Phantom Tales of the Night by Matsuri. This is volume 8. This is an ongoing supernatural mystery, horror, light horror story about a mysterious innkeeper who has various guests, and in order for them to stay the night, they have to trade a secret. They have to tell the innkeeper their deepest, darkest secret. And sometimes that goes well, sometimes it doesn't. Although I will say, over the course of the series, this has stopped being as episodic as it once was. There's still episodic elements to it, but there's a lot more recurring characters, a lot more overarching storylines. We're seeing a lot of growth with particular characters and what they're doing. It's so good, and it's so beautiful. I love the use of blacks and heavy inking in this series. I think it's just gorgeous. It sets the atmosphere perfectly. It's obviously highly detailed, as you can see. Yeah, man, I've also cried like quite a few more times in this series than I ever expected. It's just really good. Yeah, I would say that if you like spooky shit, if you like, it kind of has, Holic vibes as well. If you like that kind of stuff, or Pet Shop of Horrors, something like that, then you should probably give this one a try. It's really, really good. I'm trying to think of something else, maybe anime-wise, that it reminds me of. Mononoke is very similar. It doesn't have the bittersweet or heartwarming elements that something like Natsume's Book of Friends does. It leans more into kind of the creepier episodes or creepier chapters of Mushishi, stuff like that. If you're into that vibe, then give it a try, because it's very, very good, and I want more people to read this series. And if you are someone who doesn't necessarily like episodic stuff, you need a bit more of an overarching plot compared to like Mushishi or Mononoke or something. As I said, we do see a lot more recurring characters, and there is a lot more kind of mysteries being tied together, or characters being tied together over the course of the series, which plays a little bit more into something like Holic. So yeah, I don't know if that's convincing to anyone, but I really like the series, and it's always nice when we have a new volume. Large trim ongoing title that we have, or manga volume that I have, is from Kodansha. This is volume 6 of Tsubasa Yamaguchi's Blue Period. This is also had a recent anime adaptation, or at least part of it has been released. I don't know. It's on Netflix. I haven't watched it yet. I don't know how good it is. I couldn't tell you, obviously, because I haven't watched it yet. But I do really love this manga. This is focused on a teenage boy who, kind of late into the game, in high school, he kind of discovers a love of art, and this discovers in himself that he wants to be an artist, and so decides he's going to go to art school. But obviously, because of being behind a lot of other people who've been aiming for art school or have been planning to be artists a long time, he's now struggling to keep up. And obviously they're doing still life, nude drawing stuff in this volume, so that's nice. He's scrambling because it's very competitive and hard to get into some of the best art schools in Japan, and the best one and the one that is the most competitive is the one that is like a state school, so it would really be the only one that he could afford. His family doesn't have a whole lot of money to send him to university, so he's made the decision that like any school he goes to has to be a state one, right? He can't go to a private academy, and so that really narrowed his choice down to just one. Yakitora, who's our main character, he's really interesting. I really love how nuanced he is as a character, especially because initially it could be very easy to disregard him as like a delinquent type character, which he is. Like, he, prior to him making this decision to follow his art, he studied hard and he was a good student, and he was a fairly responsible guy, but he also would, go out drinking with his buddies and just hang out and watch the sports game, or go to karaoke and be out all night and whatever. So he wasn't necessarily like, he was a bit of a delinquent, but he also wasn't ever really causing trouble. He had known that if he wanted the best for himself, which he did, that he'd have to put in hard work, and that he had to be dedicated to his studies and keeping his grades up and all of that. And so that's all, like, initially, even just off the bat, it's very nuanced. But then when he discovers this interest in art, he's very tempted to just disregard it as unrealistic, because a lot of artists, it's not the most stable income, and it's a lot of work and a lot of time for very little recognition, as I'm sure any artist, classically trained or otherwise, could tell you. But ultimately, him coming to terms with this feeling of like, no, this is something I really want to do, and it's really important to me, and I maybe have to get over my preconceptions of what is correct and the right thing to do, and being a good son and whatever, to follow an opportunity, and not have any regrets. And even if my friends kind of perceive me differently, that's a them problem. I don't want to say that I never tried, right? Which is just so wonderful. Like, I love it so much. If this series, like a lot of, this series reminds me a lot of, in certain ways, something like Welcome to the Ballroom, which obviously they're two completely different settings and artistic expression that the series are exploring, but they're both about latecomers to this sport, which Welcome to the Ballroom is, or to this medium, following their passions because it's the thing that is the right choice for them, even if other people in their family aren't supportive, or other people don't understand, or it is really hard and they've gotten a late start. There's just something so wonderful about reading those sorts of stories, and they're typically underdog stories as well, because so you can't help but root for them. In a similar but different way, things like Haikyuu even. It's I love it. Yeah, I am planning on watching the anime at some point, but for now I'm sticking to the manga. And this has won a bunch of awards and stuff. It's very popular in Japan. Hopefully it's doing well for Kodansha as well. And hopefully you try it if you haven't, because especially if you're an artist, I think anyone who's passionate about something, whether it's music, whether it's traditional art or digital art or writing or sports or mathematics or cooking or whatever, it doesn't matter. People who are passionate, if you have something that you're passionate about, I think it's really wonderful seeing that reflected in media. People working hard towards a goal in a similar way that you might be working hard towards a goal. And yeah, I love it. It's really good. We have another Kodansha large tome volume, and this is A Sign of Affection by Su Morishita. This is volume 4. This is a super duper sweet romance about a deaf girl and a boy who helps her out and is really intrigued by her sign language and, you know, her, because he's very into like travel and learning other languages and meeting new people and different lifestyles and all sorts of things. And then obviously their friendship develops into romance, and it's just, it's really, it's pretty romantic. Really enjoyable with this one. If you like just the most sweet, warm your heart all through romance series with an especially hot guy and an adorable girl, then this is the series for you. I really like the aspect of the relationship wherein our male lead, he's very curious about the world and, you know, other people's experiences and travel, and he really likes to go out and meet new people and do new things. But then once he's kind of made aware of this whole language and community and whatever in his own home country that he never really even knew about or had any exposure to, that kind of tweaks that same real curiosity and drive to want to learn and to connect with people from that community. I find he has a real strong personality. Like, he isn't just a hot guy, but he is also a really hot guy, so like that always helps. And I think our main character, she's really sweet. She's a little bit more naive than what I typically enjoy for, series in general. But I do think it plays well to her character that for the most part she's been sheltered for her whole life. She's had a pretty supportive community and hasn't had a lot of exposure to the wider world, which again I think means that this guy who has had like so many experiences and wants to share them and wants to do things and is there and willing to like open her world up and her experiences and be the bridge between like the hearing world and herself, is just, it's uber romantic, guys. I haven't read a huge amount of Sumo Morishita's works. They've had a couple series released in English, Shortcake Cake and something else that I can't remember right now. So I am looking forward to trying some of their other stuff, but this is this one's good. This one's really good, and I encourage you to try it if you're a fan of romance series. It's good, and I do like that these characters are a little bit older. They're college students. We're not dealing with, and we're also not dealing with the same kind of themes that A Silent Voice was, which was technically a romance, but it was more of a drama than anything. But I would say that, probably the deaf representation in this is a touch better than in A Silent Voice, but it's also not as good as other series, most notably, what is it called? Our Little Sunspot. That's the one. Or Our Sunspot? Something along those lines. The BL. Which is fantastic. I Hear the Sunspot. Man, it came to me at the end. I Hear the Sunspot, which is also, it was put out by One Piece Books, and is fantastic. That one I think has the best representation of the broader deaf community or hearing loss community, whereas this one, although our main character, she is completely deaf, she does use sign language she doesn't have a lot of, and she has friends who use sign language or are partially deaf, or became deaf later in life. She doesn't have a huge amount of, her family doesn't use sign language with her, which is really weird. She doesn't have the home structure or the community around her necessarily, in the same way that most real life deaf people would, but that might just be a reflection of, I don't know, a deaf child being born to a hearing family. I don't really know. Obviously, I'm not deaf, and I do not have anyone in my family who is deaf, or fully deaf at least. So maybe I'm off base, but regardless, it is nice to have, first of all, a disabled character as, you know, as part of the romantic couple. I feel the same way of something like Perfect World, where we have a physical disability. The male lead in that one is in a wheelchair, and it's not just a gimmick. This one facilitates part of the relationship starting, but it's not gimmicky in the same way that certain other things might be. I don't know. But yeah, A Sign of Affection is really super sweet and lovely, and you should read it if you're into romance series. Have a Yuri manga. This is the most recent volume, although I'm a couple volumes behind on this one. I'm not caught up, so I cannot speak to how the series is going, but this is an ongoing Yuri drama from Takako Shimura. This is Even Though We're Adults, Volume 4. This is, for those who aren't aware, this is the same creator as Wandering Sun, Sweet Blue Flowers. I think that's all that we've gotten from her in English thus far. But a creator that I really enjoy. I really like her works. And majority, or at least all of the ones that we've gotten in English, have been focused on queer people, queer stories, and experiences. This one is about two adult women who hook up one night after meeting in a bar. They're both pretty, they've had quite a few drinks. But things are not as simple as that, because one of them is married and has been she's been married for quite a while. She doesn't have any real issues with her husband. It's not like he's cheating on her or they hate each other or anything. They actually have a pretty solid life, but and she never really experimented with bisexuality or with a woman, you know, prior to the relationship with her husband. So this is a really new experience for her, but one that she is wanting to foster. And then we have our other female lead who she's pretty, you know, she's pretty into this other woman, but also she's had some really bad experiences with bisexual women, namely, you know, being put to the side in favor of a guy. So she has some particular trauma about that. And it's a mess. Like, this is messy, dramatic. But I think that it's messy and dramatic in a very human way, in a way that is just kind of part of life's messy drama. Sometimes, you know, shit happens, or you discover something about yourself, and it's not that anybody has done anything wrong, or that there's a villain of this, or that, like, you're trying to purposely hurt somebody else, but it just, you don't want to be left with this what if, or you feel like this, you'd be happier this way. It's finally, you know, coming to terms with being truthful for yourself. And I think a lot of Shimura's at least Yuri works deals with this. As I said, I haven't read this particular volume, but I do enjoy Shimura's work for the most part. And when I heard we were getting her new Yuri drama, I jumped at the opportunity to get it because it is very, very good. The BL. So the first one is a little bit, it has a little bit of explicit scenes, but it's mostly fine. This is Kuma's newest release, Sick by Tomo Kurahashi, and this is about two university students, one who's like a geoscience student, one who's just, I don't know, someone else. I guess he's also in the sciences. Technically he's meant to, I guess they're in the same kind of degree. But this guy, our main character, he's kind of had like this ongoing teasing aggravation of a relationship with this guy, who's always in the lab. He's pretty dedicated grad student, I think. He's a grad student. And which ultimately, like, evolves into them dating, and, you know, their feelings changing and whatever. I didn't, like, this is fine. It's pretty by the numbers, like, ladies man, cool guy, top falling for the quiet, blushy, whatever, bottom, as it were. And this one kind of delves a little bit further into, like, this guy. He has a pretty big family, lots of siblings. He's the second oldest, so he's got an older brother and then 3 or 4 younger siblings, compared to the other guy, who's a single child. And so that kind of family dynamic is something that brings them a bit closer as well. You know, finding a family through your partner's, you know, relatives and blah blah blah. It's fine. Like, it's got that, like, couple spicy scenes. It's got a pretty typical arc of, you know, them getting together and whatever. I don't dislike it. I also don't love it. It's fine. What the thing that I'm like, ooh, that's a curiosity, which is a very me thing, like, extremely specific to me and my interests in my life. And I, so much so I mentioned it to my sister, because this is also true for her, is that the fact that at least this guy is a geoscience, like, he's a geology student. He's working with microscopes. We're told in the author's notes he's an outdoorsy type, that he's doing geoscience stuff. I don't know whether it's because he's a geologist or a metallurgist or geophysicist or whatever, but as someone who did earth sciences, who did a geology degree, I'm like, oh my god, we have a specific BL that is one of us. One of the leads is just one of us weird rock people, and that earns it points. Literally none of you watching gives a shit, and, like, that will probably never have an influence on anything you would ever read. But it was just like, oh, this is a curious little, we have a geologist getting their gay love on. That's A-okay in my books. So I'm actually tempted to just, like, keep this around, or maybe pass it off to my sister, because of that. It doesn't make the book any better. It literally adds nothing, because also there's a certain type of person who becomes there's 2 types of people who become geologists or geoscience people. And I wouldn't say that this guy, personality-wise, is either of them. The author's notes, I, like, mentioned that he's a real outdoorsy type and likes to do a lot of field work. Would have been nice to see in the comic, if only because I'm like, hey, field work. What are the strike and dips for that particular rock outcrop, sir? But again, that is an extremely nerdy, G-specific, like, experience that none of you watching would give a shit about, and would also probably not make for good comics. But man, I was just, like, a bit of a surprise for a book that I didn't really know anything about, and wasn't really that impressive or interesting otherwise. It's fine. You know, it's a Kuma title. It is uncensored, or uncensored for the most part, with what Kuma releases. And I don't know why it's called Sick either. Like, neither of them are sick. I don't think either of them even get sick in this book. Maybe it's like this sick interest, this sick fascination they have in, I don't know, because it's not that, like, twisted or anything either. I don't know. It just seems like a weird aspect of this. Anyway, it's fine. Like, if you're a BL fan and you like this kind of not rivals, but like teasing or annoying co-workers to lovers, soft boy meets ladies man type of dynamic, you'd probably be into it. Yeah, it's not my favorite, but it's fine. Like, it didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't abhorrent or offensive or anything. It's just very by the numbers. Next, we have a Sublime title, one that I was really looking forward to. This is from a mangaka that I really enjoy, and that is, of course, Lynx by Natsuki Kizu, creator of Given. This is a one-shot kind of short story collection about 3 or 4 different couples that are all pretty interlocked with each other. They all are, have separate lives and are doing separate things, but they all know each other in some capacity. We have a radio host and a cafe owner, or kind of like a barista. We have I guess he's just like an office worker, and then this dude who like does engraving, but he's also kind of part of the Yakuza. We have a different cafe owner and one of the younger guys from the Yakuza, and he has kind of like previous drama, sad backstory. And then we have these two here who have been together since high school. One who's the young heir of this Yakuza group, and the other who is a member of the Yakuza group now. But they met in high school after the older brother of one of the characters, his older brother was killed in a car accident that the other was driving the car. So that's rough. And that said older brother was dating one of the other guys. That's what all this drama is about. But it's about like finding love and discovering love and rediscovering love, or figuring out communicating love, I guess. Like with Given, this isn't the like softest or sweetest, like most fluffy, non-conflict filled type of story. As I said, there's some pretty major drama that does involve death, which also Given does as well. So like, some familiar themes. So if you enjoy Given, I think this is worth giving a try. I like these couples. I think they're pretty interesting. I think it's always nice in this and also in Given showing that there's, just because a relationship ends or you've had bad experience in the past, like, there's always hope for new relationships, for new loves, for like grieving but growing and finding happiness. And that's something that I think Natsuki Kizu does really, really well. Her artwork is fantastic, really lovely. I wouldn't say that all of these are necessarily the healthiest relationships, understandably, but this is, regardless, a very intriguing book. I do really enjoy all of these couples, and I also really like how the relationship between brothers is handled. I think that was really well done, and it, in a similar sense to how in Given, the relationship with one of the characters and his previous boyfriend is really well handled. I think that grief is such a large part of Kizu's work, and I don't want to speculate as to why that's the case, but I do think that it's handled really, really well and in a really mature, nuanced way, wherein you never stop loving somebody who you've lost, but that shouldn't prevent you from growing and moving on and finding new people. It shouldn't it shouldn't stop you from living your life, and I think that's just one of the really great messages. Yeah, this was really good. I really enjoyed it. It's my favorite of my BL that I got this month, and I kind of expected to like it, but I'm surprised that I did like it as much as I did. Not for any other reason than I didn't really know anything about it, and as a short story collection, that can always be a little bit hit or miss, but I do think it was helped by the fact that it was multiple couples and like several separate stories, but it was kind of like the Love Actually thing where everyone is actually kind of interconnected. It isn't just one or completely separate chapters or completely separate setting and story and idea per chapter. You have quite a bit of crossover, and a lot of these characters interact with each other. Yeah, it's good, and I highly recommend it to every BL fan, but especially those who are already fans of Given. Check it out. I'm going to talk about Together, not because they are related, they're from the same creator. I haven't read either of them yet, though, and I don't know anything about them. But this is, I think they're maybe one's a short story collection, this, and then another is just like a complete relationship, like single volume book, but both of them are by SDEM. So this is Seduce Me After the Show and Red Blinds the Foolish, both put out by Do, which used to be a BL publication, Do Press. And for those, I'm a big SDEM fan. She has put out a lot of titles in English over the years. We've seen Tableau numero 20 or Tableau number 20 from Sublime. She's had a couple other from other publications as well. Really distinctive style, really into bullfighting. So that's something that comes across a lot in her works. Most notably, we also got an SDEM Dojin Carmen at TCAF one year, which is cool and exciting and something that I do own and I think is well worth reading. There's a sensuality to her work, but I think, like with most good artists, regardless, but especially most good BL artists, she's completely self-indulgent, which means that her works aren't necessarily going to appeal to everyone, but that's what makes them cool and interesting. It's very much a Natsume Ono vibe from a lot of the character designing as well, so if that's something you're into. None of her titles, like a lot of BL of this period as well, there's not anything inherently like super explicit. You're not gonna see genitals without, the typical censorship, but I don't think you see genitals anyway in STEM works. Not that I can remember. But it's more about the sensuality, the atmosphere created versus like the explicit nature of these works, which lends itself to, the relationship, the passion of the relationship. Yeah, as a big STEM fan, these were, I think, the only two that I'm missing out of my collection. So I picked them up in a lot, actually. So I got a couple volumes that I already had, so I just sold my duplicate copies and kept these for me. So yeah, really happy to have these finally. I've been looking for specifically Red Blinds the Foolish for many, many, many years. 2 light novels. So first up we have the newest volume. Well, not technically, because I think the actual newest one has just been released by this publisher. But one of the most recent volumes of Ascendance of a Bookworm, I'll Do Anything to Become a Librarian, Part 3, Adopted Daughter of an Archduke by Mia Kazuki and Yoshina. This is put out by J Novel Club and is one of my favorite ongoing light novel series anyway. It's definitely one of my favorite isekai. I think that Mine is really interesting character, and I love her dynamic with all of the different characters. I love how her selfishness really developed into this selflessness without truly ever changing her goals. I just really love almost everything about this series. It's not one that really needs an introduction. It has some very popular anime adaptations over the last years. And I haven't read any of this arc yet, but oh my god, I was a mess after the finale of part 2. The reason I haven't read this arc yet is because I'm saving up till I have all 5 volumes. So I'm just waiting for the most recent one to be sent to me, and then I will binge read all of them, which is going to be a lot of content because these are chunky books. There's a lot. They are hefty. But yeah. Yes, I'm looking forward to it. It's a good series, and I highly recommend it to people who are wanting a female-led novel series, who are into isekai but aren't into like the male power fantasy isekai, who aren't into like pro-slavery narratives, who aren't into pro-militia narratives. It's very, very good, and I commend J-Novel for getting these out in a really timely manner as well. Oh my god, so I had to buy this through proxy because they wouldn't ship to my country. Initially they did ship to my country, but I was asleep when they announced that, and then by the time I was awake, they didn't do it anymore, and then so I was stuck with having to get it through my proxy because I could have bought the standard edition, but I don't own any of the standard editions of the previous release. So I had to get the release that matched my releases, although I am considering like quote unquote upgrading to the newer releases. I'm kind of on the fence because I do like the series, but I'm also, it's one of those like of its time series. Although this book is newer, it's a new release, and that is The Intuition of Haruhi Suzumiya by Nagaru Tanigawa. This is I believe a collection of like shorter stories that Tanigawa has written over the years for Haruhi. It isn't inherently, I don't think it's like one continuous novel, like storyline. Yeah, there's 3 different things here, so it's bits and pieces. It is nice to see more Haruhi in the year. It came out in 2021, but in the year 2022, like, it's a bit amazing to consider that Haruhi is still out there and there's still a possibility of it returning. I actually do like the Haruhi novels a lot. I like the anime adaptation a lot as well. Obviously, that's how I was introduced to the series, like most people. And I like how the characters and the story has grown over the course of the series. But also, it's not a series that I revisit a lot, and I don't see myself revisiting in the future. Namely because if I wanted to re-experience a solid chunk of it, probably the first 4 or 5 volumes, I could just watch the anime adaptation because it's a solid adaptation, and but 6 and 7, and I think this is the 11th or 10th or 11th volume overall. And so I do like the stuff that comes after as well. So I'm like really on the fence. I don't know. I haven't made a decision, but obviously I got this just this month because I bought it through proxy and I finally shipped my proxy to me. and I haven't read it yet, so I can't really speak to the quality of any of these, but I haven't heard anything terrible about them, so I don't know. Yeah, I think for the most part, for any new Haruhi stuff, I'll probably just follow it digitally. It's not a series that I need in my life inherently. But it's one of those series that was emblematic of the era that it was coming out of, but it's not necessarily to the tastes of what current day light novel market is. And so I don't know. It was a juggernaut, hugely popular and influential. By right, it should have been. Like, it's not bad. It was well deserved. It had issues. Oh my god, it had issues, and the adaptation had almost worse issues. But it's not any worse than like the pro-slavery stuff we have now. So you know, you win some, you lose some. But yeah, I couldn't see this inherently gaining the popularity that it did at the time without the KyoAni adaptation, especially in the West, maybe in Japan, but yeah, anyway, it's solid, it's good. There's a reason this is kind of like a modern classic novel series, but it's not like, I don't think, especially for like new, young, like fresh-faced young light novel readers, this is a must read. As the series as a whole, it might be something to read to kind of get perspective as to where the market was in the early 2000s, but I think there's enough alternative and arguably better executed series of a similar type to choose from nowadays. Done, my baby. I have read this because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. There was such a cliffhanger on this volume, and oh my god. And so I read it immediately, and man, this series is just buck wild. What series is this? It is The Scum Villain Self-Saving System, Volume 2 by Mojang Tongshu, or Scum Villain SSS, or SVSSS, or Renja Fanpai Jiju Zuju Jitong. Apologies again, my Chinese / Mandarin is horrific, so do not. I'm sorry, I know I butcher everything. I'm just not good, and I try. I do try, but I'm not nearly good enough to say I have any proficiency in the language. But this is the second volume of very funny Danmai series, Chinese gay web novel, for those who don't know what Danmai means, which has the first book, or the first story arc, I guess, has a animated adaptation, donghua. It is CG animation, so I would argue probably, I mean, MXTX fans have probably seen it, and probably Danmai fans have seen it, but this is kind of the black sheep out of MXTX's library of works. Her other series, The Grand Master of Diabolism, or Modal Zushi, and then and Heaven Official's Blessing, or Tianguan Sifu, are far more popular. Their animated adaptations, their donghua, are far more popular, done in a more traditional 2D style. They also have manhwa web comic versions as well, whereas I don't think Scum Villain has that, which again are hugely popular. I don't think the Modal Zushi one's available, but I know that that Heaven Official's Blessings is on Bilibili, or one of the Chinese comic web services. But it is the black sheep. It's kind of the lesser out of the trio, but It's very funny. Oh my god, the series is a mess, and by that I mean the relationship is a mess. But that's kind of what we like. Why we come to read this, because they're both such a mess. This is an isekai about a guy who a young Chinese, like 20-odd-year-old, self-described as like a pretty faced useless individual. He came from a pretty good family, was fairly smart, had his life kind of cut out for him, was set to live a fairly standard, hot guy life, but he ended up reading this super popular web novel, what is called a stallion novel in China, which is like the most wish fulfilling dumb bullshit, like, and the guy fought 1,000,000 demons and won because he's just that cool, and then he had a harem of 27 girls and blah blah blah. And the one that he's reading is like super popular. Everybody's talking about it. He's been following it for ages, and he kind of like, he finds it really interesting and it's really compelling. It's got some great world building, but also like sometimes it's just really shit world building. The story falls apart. Certain plot lines are introduced and then forgotten about. And it's just like, it's extremely wish fulfilling. It's kind of like if a story was created by like an 8-year-old, like there might be, or a 12-year-old. There's some really cool ideas and like a lot of foreshadowing and stuff, but also not the discipline to pull it all together, and so plot lines are forgotten and blah blah blah. Anyway, it finished. This web novel finished, and he's just so upset. Like, he freaking hates the ending. He's just like, what kind of bullshit is this? It's so unrealistic. You forgot all this stuff. The writing at times was just so childish. Blah blah blah. He got so angry. He was like angry tweeting about how much he didn't like the ending of this novel, and he got so angry he choked on his bow and died. And because he was like so upset and angry, when he was dying, he heard this like computer voice in his brain that was like, well, you try better then. And so he wakes up in the body of the one of the main villains of this novel, which originally he was like this terrible master who abused the main character all through his childhood. And so one of the first things the main character does after getting his super cool demon powers is to like expose the treachery of his master and like torture and kill him for the rest of forever, right? It's not a good time. He's a bad dude, and he's like, oh my god, I've been reincarnated as just the worst guy. And he's like, but wait a minute, no, but that means that the main character, the protagonist, he's still really young, so I have an opportunity. I can like, if I treat him well, then he won't come kill me, and maybe I can live a peaceful, happy life. But that would be too simple. And in fact, our main character, not the main character, but our main character, discovers that he has like an operating system in his head that he can hear that tells him all of these rules that he can't break. He can't go too far out of the character guidelines. He can't metagame, basically. This guy got reincarnated as, the villainess of this piece, but unlike, Bakarina or any of these other shoujo kind of isekai, where a girl ends up as the villain of the otome game, he's not allowed to metagame. He can metagame a little bit, but he's also not allowed to change the personality of this character, because if he gets to 0 points, he's like actually dead for reals, and he doesn't want to actually die for reals. But so, over the course of the first book, he finds tricky ways to like not be terrible to the protagonist, and things shift, and but actually maybe he was too good at his job because now the protagonist isn't like interested in any of the 300 girls who were in his harem in the original story. He just doesn't have any interest in them. And he seems like a little bit kind of obsessive over his teacher. I wonder what that's about. So basically, yeah, our main character kind of metagamed, subtly metagamed too good. So now he's ended up as kind of the only romantic interest for this amazing hot guy protagonist. But oh my god, there's so much. So anyway, the previous book ended where the animated adaptation ended, which I had watched prior. So I knew kind of most of the story. But there was a little bit at the end that I didn't know, or I hadn't seen, like wasn't in that show. And I was like, oh my god, what? It was a big twist. And then this was all new stuff to me, and oh my god, when I'm telling you, it's gone off. People are dying. There is a war going on. There humans and the demon realm, genocide. Oh my god, our protagonist has become like this horrific, overwhelming, just fucking dictator. And our main character is, to put it lightly, he died, but not like, he's okay, kind of, but not fully okay. And then there's a 5-year time skip where he's just not in the story, so he is also like, I don't have no idea what the fuck's going on, because this whole book, he's just like, well, I guess I metagamed too good, and now the story's completely changed, so I have absolutely no way to figure out what's going on. So yeah, he's just kind of scrambling and trying to survive. But oh my god, it's really good. It's this MXTX relationships for all her couples. Modao Zushi's is a I want to say, like, it's got its drama. It will fuck you up. It's not fucked up. It will fuck you up. All of her erotic stuff is like, it's pretty out there for some people. I think Danmai in general is just like a bit. You'll be like, oh my god, this is so good, but then also you have the asterisk, like 12 caveats of like, yeah, okay, there was like the weird scene where it's kind of like Finder. Which is not a series I'm a fan of, but I can only imagine how many people who are a fan of it are like, yeah, it's not good, but it was kind of like of the level of what normally stuff is. But then also there's that corn scene, and you're like, what? Excuse me? The corn scene? That's basically like every Danmai that's ever been made. It's like, oh yeah, it's really good, really love the couple, like the story's great. Also, there's the scene with wine, and you're like, what do you mean? Oh, like when they're drinking wine? You're like, no, that's not the scene no, you'll know when you get to it. And everyone's just like, what? You sound like an insane person. Yeah, so I don't want to say that this series hasn't gotten to that point, because it hasn't, but I'm just gonna say that this series will probably appeal to those who are fans of yandere, maybe? There's a lot of yandere vibes happening in this series, and that's good, that's okay. People can be yandere. This one is more of a straight comedy than her other series. But that's not to say it's not good or not worth reading, or that it doesn't have its serious moments. It certainly does. But there's a reason that this one's like the least popular. It's also her oldest work. It's her first one. So she's grown a lot over the course of her career. And so maybe if you didn't like this series, check out her other ones, which are a little bit more a little less fucked up, relationship wise. Yeah, anyway. I enjoy MXTX's stuff, warts and all. And honestly, like, that kind of weird shit kind of gives it flavor. I'm never gonna judge a creator too harshly for making their relationships weird, aside from if they're, like, actually uncomfortably weird. And we know what that is when it's not this shit. Yeah, Scum Villain is good, but man, is it a ride. Finally, for novels, I have, just quickly, I have 3 Bryson hardcovers. We have The Road to Little Dribbling, which is a travelogue book. The Body, which is a non-fiction book about the body, who would have guessed. And then Down Under, which is his Australian travelogue. I said last month that I always try to, well, when I find hardcover releases of Bill Bryson books, I try to buy them because I do really enjoy his works, and I find him very funny. And, yeah, I got really lucky this month, so I have 3 more. I don't think I have too many more of his books to find in hardcover. If you're a fan of travelogue, if you're a fan of, like, satire, then, or satiristic look of society and culture and whatever else, maybe give his stuff a try. Yeah, what else to say other than that? I'm really happy that I have these now, and it means that I'm almost finished collecting all of his books and rereading all of his books too. But certainly not least, we also have a webcomic. This is the final volume of Starfighter, which is also 18+, so I'm not going to go to... I'm going to carefully open it. But this is a kind of long webcomic from the days when webcomics were published on, like, people's personal websites. I guess that still happens. It's like a sci-fi romance drama about these 2 guys who are partners. Their code names are Cain and Abel. Their actual names are Ethan and Alexi. Yeah, I've been following Starfighter since forever. Like, I'm pretty sure I discovered it in high school, and it's only, I think, over the pandemic it finished, maybe just at the very early stages. I hadn't realized the last book had come out, so the previous ones had been crowdfunded. This one hadn't, so that's kind of, I guess, why I missed that. Like, I just didn't know about it. But yeah, kind of sad, but like happy that it's over and I saw it finish. Man, this chapter of my life is now over. I enjoy Hamlet Machine's stuff. I think she has a current comic she's working on, but she does a lot of fan art and stuff as well. So yeah, I mean, fair warning if you're following her socials, she draws mostly explicit stuff, so maybe that's not something you want to be following, but yeah, I think she's a very talented comics creator. Starfighter was, at least in my spaces that I was on when I was a teen, it was one of the more well-known webcomics for, yeah, kind of like BL or queer webcomics. I don't know if that's the case nowadays. Certainly, probably a lot of the kids these days wouldn't necessarily have known about it. But yeah, happy that it's finished and I got to see the end, and I can reread this whole story from beginning to end in book form now. We have come to the end of the video. I had to turn the lights on because it was getting dark. It's that time of the year where the sun goes down much earlier than it used to. Thank you everyone for watching. Let me know your thoughts, feelings, opinions on any of the series that I talked about today. Whether it be manga, comic, novel, light novel, danmai, whatever. I got a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, it's kind of some big things coming to an end, some really exciting finds, for me at least. Some continuations of some fantastic series. I'm just really happy overall, as always. You know, I don't like to buy things or expand the collection, as it were, with stuff that I am not interested or not happy with. Yeah. Let me know your thoughts, feelings, opinions on any of the titles that I talked about today, whether you love them, hate them, haven't even heard of them. I do try to respond to, well, I read all the comments. I try to respond as best I can to them. So it's always wonderful to see who's watching, who's listening. Otherwise, you can follow me on social media, or more specifically on Twitter at GReads, so GEE_reads. Yes, it is different. I've changed my handle because I'm actually much happier with the GReads one. I'm trying to distance myself from this idea of collecting for collection's sake. I've always been very focused on like only buying what you love, actually buying and enjoying, or reading and enjoying, or watching and enjoying the things that you have in a collection. I don't just, hoard things for aesthetic reasons. That's never been my idea of a good time, as it were. But yeah, maybe that's an unpopular perspective, but it's one that I've found to be very important to me over the course of my time here on YouTube, and over the course of me buying and collecting manga and anime and everything else for so many years. But that's neither here nor there. But I am on Twitter quite often, so if you're wanting to reach out to me or contact me in any way, you can do so there. Additionally, I do a manga podcast every month with my co-host Ray from Whimsical Pictures. She's fantastic. And we recently put out, kind of coincidentally and interestingly enough, about discontinued manga in English, where we talk about Swan, most specifically. And I think it's a really great episode. We had some wonderful questions and hopefully some pretty interesting answers. That is posted on this channel, so if you are interested in that, you can find that here. Or you can also find it on, the major podcasting platforms, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Anchor FM, wherever else, I don't know. I don't know where people listen to podcasts and things, but we are on the major ones. And we do that every month, so you can listen to me talk even more about manga. As if you don't hear my lovely voice enough, I say facetiously. But thank you guys so much for watching. We are already a whole third of the way through this year. Can you believe it? This year's gone so quickly. And although things are slowly getting more normal, I would argue that we are definitely not back to normal. And so, as to how the future looks, hopefully things will be brighter, because a lot of people in a lot of places are not doing very well right now. And so, as always, look after yourselves first and foremost, but also be kind to each other. Stay happy, stay healthy, and I will catch you in the next video, guys. Bye till then.